My name is Darren, and of course, you're going to dig my story.
Hi, I'm Chris. I'm going to talk about how acting through smoke from a gun led to an impossible mission.
Hi, I'm Adri, and I'm going to tell you all about 1500 Spooksylvania Avenue.
What do all these stories have to do with the word grave? Find out in this week's episode of History Bluffs. Hello and welcome to this episode of History Bluffs. As always, it's where truth is stranger than fiction. And now I want to welcome to the show, it's your host, it's Alan!
Hello! Welcome to another exciting episode of History Bluffs. As you heard, introduced, our grave topic is grave, and that is our announcer, Adam. Hi, Adam.
Hello, Alan. Good to see you.
It's good to see you, too. And you know what I'd like to see right now is the rules to the game History Bluffs.
The rules, let's do it. This is a game show, and we have rules. We're going to put them on the screen if you're watching. If you can't see, Alan's going to read them.
Historians are inspired by the topic. The true stories are factual. They cannot incorporate any embellished falsehoods. The bluff story, the premise, as it were, is fictional. Now, the bluff story could have facts in it that might actually be true, but the crux of the story must be untrue. And also, from you, the audience that are groaning right now, I'm sorry to say you cannot help anyone with your own personal knowledge of the topic or things that you may have Googled during the time of the show. So let's get right underway. Adam, are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's do this game.
Let's skip right to it. I'm going to start round one with Darren, but of course we have to introduce round one after we got to introduce that round tracker, don't we?
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, it's like the technology of everything. So let's bring it up. Hold on. I've got it somewhere around here.
Raise the roof for the round tracker. Which version is this, Adam?
I think this is 1.2.
Ooh, 1.2. The round tracker 1.2. It just rolls off the tongue.
It
does.
It does. It's an early release.
It's okay. We couldn't find the current version, so we dusted off our floppy disk and put it right in the drive. Well,
that's right.
Speaking of drive, I would like to drive on forward with Darren and your topic for round one. But let's give the official beginning of round one, Adam.
Let's do it. Round number one. That's a round. That is a round if I ever heard one.
That's right. Darren, you're going to go. Oh, by the way, I didn't tell you how long these rounds are, did I?
Oh, it's a mystery.
It is a mystery unless I tell you. So round one is 75 seconds. Round two is 60 seconds. And round three is going to be 45 seconds. And at the end of which we will determine... Short. I know, right? Well, time is money, people.
Okay.
They ain't got time to wait around for everyone to just make up stuff. So
none. We
will find out who the armchair historian is and who is a history bluff.
Oh, it's one of them. It's one of them.
It will be. Look, there's already some accusations going on right over there. I see them.
Oh.
People pointing out who they think the bluff is.
They are.
It could be anyone. But right now we got to hear Darren's story to kick off round one. Darren, when you're ready.
Okay. 175 years before the hit TV show The Wire brought drug smuggling to national attention, Baltimore was the center of a national syndicate of a very different kind of smuggling. It all started in 1830 when the nation's first railroad, the Baltimore and Ohio, began passenger and freight service in Baltimore and eventually as far west as Chicago and St. Louis. The Baltimore and Ohio revolutionized transportation. It altered people's sense of time and place, and it's credited for knitting America together into one nation. Suddenly, instead of it being a 6-week journey to places like Chicago, now it's just a few days away by train. And that meant that people could move around and marry someone in a totally different state. Businesses could ship goods hundreds of miles. Things like milk and fresh produce could now have a market all over the country. But there was one commodity that the railroad made possible that nobody could have possibly seen coming. And I'm talking about something that medical students need. I'm talking about cadavers, corpses, dead bodies stolen out of the ground and secretly shipped all over the country by rail.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Yes. Chris, what do you think about the corpse train?
Well, the corpse train, interesting concept, Darren. I give you credit for that. However, he says in 1834, the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad was basically credited with knitting America into one nation. I think there's some loose threads in his story here. We already were, by that point, we already had rail going out west and going north and south, and so I'm skeptical.
Skeptical. Chris is skeptical. Adri, what say you?
I too am skeptical. The thing that really stood out to me was that these trains are transporting corpses, and Amtrak moves so slow that you turn into a corpse. So I think that there's some kind of alignment here between what's the current state and this fictional story that Darren made up about
1830.
1830.
1834 to be exact.
18 whatever. That's
I remember like it was yesterday.
keeping track of the facts here. Not me. Chris, it's your turn to kick off your round one story with a bang. Here we go.
Okay, so Peter Dusler Orness, born March 18th, 1926 in Minneapolis, Minnesota. He was the younger son of Rolf Circular Orness, a businessman, and his wife Ruth, and he was the younger brother of one James Arness. This gentleman named Peter, he decided when he got following his brother's footsteps into acting, he decided to use his mother's maiden name. We all know him as Peter Graves. Peter Graves is 3 years younger than his brother James Arness. Not many people know that they're actually related. They both went into World War II. James Arness was in the infantry. Peter Graves went into the Army Air Corps, what they called at the time. Today we know it as the Air Force. And when he got out, he followed his brother out to Hollywood, and he first got into acting out there. And he met up with a high school buddy of his who became a producer. They were doing odd jobs. Graves worked at a car wash, but he couldn't really catch a break until he found a role that I'll tell you about in round two.
Wow. Adri, it sounds like Chris is saying Peter Graves wasn't really named Graves. Do you believe that?
As of right now, I do believe Chris's story is very... it makes sense. Everything lines up. Everything, adds up. So I don't have really anything to say right now about Chris's story.
All right. It's quite plausible that Peter Graves wasn't born with the name Graves. Darren, what do you think?
I think that maybe Chris cherry-picked his fact about him being, Peter Graves being in the Army Air Corps, Air Force, from watching the classic movie Airplane, where, of course, he played Captain Over.
That's right.
And I'm about over believing you.
Oh, already there's doubt.
Roger.
All right.
Clearance.
We've got a lot of airplane jokes coming up this episode, I'm sure. Adri, it's time for your round one story, and you're going to hear that cannon shot to kick it off.
Did you know that the White House is haunted? Neither did I. But per whitehouse.org...
I had to.
Oh. There have been 11 reported ghost sightings, including former presidents like Jackson, Jefferson, and Harrison, a British soldier, and a daughter of Lincoln's assassin, conspirator, and more. Okay, that was a lot. This particular story is about the reported sightings of Abraham Lincoln, whose son Willie Lincoln died in the White House at the age of 12 in 1862. Willie died of bilious fever, which is most likely like typhoid fever caused by contaminated water systems in the White House. Willie died in the Prince of Wales room. where Willie's mother was unable to mourn her son in there, so she would go to the Red Room, which is nearby, and she was known to participate in seances so that she could talk to Willie after he died. 3 years later, something terrible happens, and we'll talk about that in round 2.
Oh my goodness. Oh, poor Mrs. Lincoln. It wasn't the first death in her family, or it wasn't the last death in her family, unfortunately.
Wasn't the last.
Of course. Maybe it was because it's all made up. We don't know. Darren, what do you think?
I think the idea that there's been ghost sightings in the White House makes a lot of sense because with the exception of Obama and the recent Orange Man, they've all been pasty white men who could be, with white hair, could be mistaken for ghosts.
Yeah,
Lots of ghosts
speaking
in
of,
that house.
Darren just described a pumpkin.
yes.
I did.
What, Chris, what do you think about the White Haunted Mansion?
The White Haunted Mansion. Well, it sounds interesting. When she mentioned Red Room, it reminded me of another big classic estate that's haunted and sightings of a young boy. Of course, the movie The Shining. So I'm going to see where she's going with this story to see if I see any more ghosts from The Shining in her story.
Nice.
Red rum.
Reference. We'll see if there's more Shining references, and I'll find my Scatman Crothers character to bring out later. But that looks like that's all the time we have for round 1, Adam. So what does that mean?
That means with that round full, we're going to round number 2.
It is round 2 time.
Here we are.
And Chris, we're going to kick you. We're not going to kick you. We're going to kick
No,
off
please
round
don't.
2. Kick Chris.
We can. I mean, it's not that kind of show, but
It's going to be difficult when we're all remote from each other. But Chris,
That's not what I signed up for.
that's true. Oh, hey, Alan. How is round 2 different from round 1?
oh, well, if you don't remember me timing the rounds earlier, round 2 has a mere 60 seconds per story. So keep that in mind.
That's right.
As our historians deliver them. Chris, you've got 1 minute on the clock. You ready?
I'm ready.
Proceed.
Okay. So as Darren pointed out, Peter Graves is known by most people under 40 for his role as Captain Over in the movie Airplane, which a role, by the way, that he actually turned down. And then the producers went to him and pleaded with him in person over lunch to try to do it. He said, no, go get a comedian. And they said to him, no, we need traditional actors like you to do this deadpan. And that's how they sold him on doing that movie. But his most popular role for most people know him as playing Jim Phelps, of course, in the TV series Mission Impossible that ran from 1966 to 73, but then was wildly popular in syndication the rest of the 70s throughout the 80s. But what you might not know is that, like his brother, he also starred in a Western, a TV series that was about a Western called Whiplash. It was in Australia. It was based in Australia's Western zone. And he actually directed his older brother in 1966 in an episode of Gunsmoke. What?
Interesting. All right. Darren, what do you think of that?
I'm finding it strangely plausible. I do know a bit of history of Mission Impossible, believe it or not. For instance, it was the very first TV show to ever show hacking a computer, which they did by putting a bad punch card in. Not kidding.
Oh,
you can look that up.
Interesting.
Yeah, I could see it.
Okay.
Yeah.
You could see it. I could see also another 1960s star making his way into the show, unabashed.
It's your Spock glass. You never host without it.
It's my Spock
Another
glass.
Mission Impossible actor.
That's
Yes,
right. He
indeed.
was in an episode of Mission Impossible.
I forgot
In a
Leonard
season.
Nimoy did that. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, he played a big role.
Yeah,
We'll see.
Adri, what do you think?
I think I have never watched anything that anyone just mentioned in the last minute. So I am void
Fair.
of comment altogether.
Okay.
Okay, no opinion from Adri.
All right.
So I think it's time to move on to
Let's see.
Adri. Your round 2 opportunity is going to start right now.
All right. So 3 years after little Willie died in the White House, which I never knew. That's crazy. 3 years after that, Lincoln was assassinated, as we know. Following his death, the president lay in state in the East Room during the day for mourners, and then they moved him into the Prince of Wales room where Willie died during the evenings for the family and staff to privately mourn. 5 years later, the first sighting of Willie occurred in the White House by the Grant administration staff. 5 years after that, First Lady Coolidge, which was don't remember his first name, but President Coolidge was in the Prince of Wales room deciding how to decorate it, because that's what they do, and she started hearing the sounds of crying echoing from the chimney. Over the next 60 years, different people like Winston Churchill, Queen Wilhelmina of the Netherlands, they all stayed in the Prince of Wales room and reported hearing crying echoing from the chimney in the room.
Spooky, scary.
It's
Darren.
juicy. It gets juicy.
Oh, it gets more juicy from there. Darren,
Yes.
what do you think?
I think hers also sounds plausible just from her erudite pronunciation of the word chimney.
Ooh. Interesting. Chris, what do you think?
I think she mentioned Little Willie as for William, Willie Lincoln, and I think she just recently heard the song "Little Willie, Willie won't go home. You can't stop Willie because Willie won't go." She said he won't go home, but I believe this completely, because you could hear right now, if you go to the White House right now, you hear crying. It's the American people crying about the state of the country.
It's true. People
Solid
are
point.
discontent. They're discontent in this country, yes. Oh, boy. Hey, Darren, I don't think you've gotten to go in round 2, have you?
No.
Let's hear your follow-up. 60 seconds are on the clock. Go ahead.
Okay. So because of its location, Baltimore became a center for resurrections, as grave robbers referred to their business, partly because a half a dozen medical schools in the city needed a steady supply of corpses. But it also helped that Maryland's largest population center was located in a zone that often allowed digging in winter when the ground was frozen in New England and the Midwest. And so the way it worked, the plunderers started by shoveling at the head of a freshly buried coffin, breaking open the lid, putting a hook under the neck or the armpit, and then with a rope, easing the body out of the grave. For shipment by train, the corpses were folded into barrels and filled with whiskey to mask the odor. At the destination, a medical school took the remains out for dissection. And now, no one likes to waste good whiskey. So after the body was removed, the quote-unquote rot gut whiskey was sold to anyone who would drink it. And that is the origin of the term, a stiff drink.
Ooh. If this were true, that would be a wonderful bit of trivia to present at parties. Adri, what do you think?
I am both nauseous and intrigued, which doesn't usually go hand in hand. As a whiskey drinker, I believe it, because oftentimes I'll be drinking whiskey and say, God, this tastes like death.
Yeah. Okay.
So I am just blown away right now. It sounds plausible, but also sounds so ridiculous that it's probably not true. So, yeah, that's all I have to say at the moment. Waiting for round 3.
Waiting for round 3. Not sure to make her decision just yet. And that's fair. That's fair. Chris, what do you think?
Well, I still have some issue with Baltimore as his chosen location for this tale that he is weaving. Digging in Baltimore in the winter is easier than digging in New York or the Northeast. Baltimore is basically in the Northeast. It's just slightly south of that. And the ground is difficult to dig there in the winter. I know from firsthand experience. But I will give him props. I love that. Even if it's not true, I want so bad for this to be true that is the origin of the term a stiff drink. I love that.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah.
I want that.
We'll find out at the end of this episode, so stay tuned. And we're getting to the end of the episode because it's time for the final round, Adam.
Oh my God, let's do it, Alan. Let's go to round number 3. Here we are. are.
Right. Round 3, where the time limit is a mere 45 seconds and the points are triple because there were none in the first place.
Triples.
Adri,
Yes.
you need to tell us the resolution of this sad, sad tale of Willie Lincoln.
Oh, yeah.
Was he a real little boy? Did he really die? Did Mary Todd lose both a son and later a husband? We're going to find out after all these tales are told. So let's hear your final chapter.
Round 3.
So Queen Wilhelmina of Netherlands was visiting the White House during the 1960s when in the middle of the night she woke up and saw the image of a tall, slender man in what is called a frock coat and a top hat sitting at the edge of her bed looking over at her with tears coming down his face. That was the last reported sighting of anything Lincoln related in the White House until on the eve of Christmas 1991, the grandchildren of Bush Sr. were all at the White House being hosted by him. They were all in the Red Room, the same room where Mary was doing her seances to talk to Willie, when what happened? Suddenly, the candles in the room began to flicker, the fireplace turned off, and a cold chill blew through the room. The kids vowed to never go in there again, including the twins that belonged to Bush Jr. or younger Bush. They never went in there again because of that.
Interesting. So I do know that Jenna Bush is one of the Today Show hosts. Or
Yes.
Good Morning. What is it? Today?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, she's she's with NBC. So maybe she told this story on the air. I don't know. Darren, what do you think?
Well, I think the 1960s were about the time that the Netherlands legalized or decriminalized the use of drugs like marijuana. So I'm not surprised that Queen Wilhelmina was seeing things on her trip to America.
Okay.
That could be it.
Chris, what do you think?
Excuse me. Queen Wilhelmina saw the ghost of Lincoln standing there in a frock with a top hat, and I say no frocking way.
Oh!
That's smackdown.
Wow. Harsher words never been said on History Bluffs.
Not on this show. No, sir.
I assure you. Let's bring out Darren for his round 3 wrap-up of
All
the
right.
corpse train / origin of the stiff drink.
Let's do it.
All right. So the thing about grave robbing is it was rarely prosecuted. Take this case, for example. In June of 1887, Dr. William T. Kethel, Jr., an assistant demonstrator of anatomy at the Baltimore University Medical School, and 3 of his medical students were caught at 10:35 p.m. on a joyride of sorts, headed back to the dissection room with a dead young woman. Drinking was reportedly involved. The Baltimore Sun reported the doctor and his companions had playfully stuck a pipe in the mouth of the corpse, which appeared to be enjoying a smoke. Cathell was arrayed in a pair of high rubber boots, a hunting cap jauntily on his head. They drove a large Dayton wagon drawn by a pair of handsome bay horses. No prosecution followed the arrest.
Okay, that's the end of the story. Adri, what's your take so far?
I'm so stuck on the whole whiskey thing. I don't know how we got to the third part of this, but they said that drinking was involved. I imagine they were drinking I guess, liquid embalmment. I don't know. But yeah, this story took a turn. I don't know how believable it is anymore, as much as I want to believe it.
Okay. We're not sure if this is the origin of the term stiff drink. Chris, what do you think?
I was waiting for him to get into something about with the dead body smuggled onto the train that was the origin of Soul Train, but he never went there.
There it is.
I'm gonna wait to hear my own story to see who I believe.
Fair. All right. Well,
Me too.
speaking of people to believe, Chris, it's time to see whether or not we believe you and your origin of Peter Graves.
Yes, Peter Graves, brother of James R. Ness, and so they had parallel lives. They were brothers, 3 years apart, but very different lives. James Arness acted with one of his wives in his show that he's best known for, Gunsmoke. Peter Graves did not act with his wife. He met his wife in college. They were married 60 years until his death. He died 4 days before his 84th birthday, and they were still married at the time. She outlived him. But her parents didn't. They wanted him to get a solid job before they would allow him to marry her. And he got this gig in Hollywood as an actor. So they said, sure, why not? But their lives were completely different. James Arness married multiple times. Peter Graves married once for 60 years. But they both had these tremendously successful acting careers. And nobody knows that they're brothers.
Okay, interesting. I'm sorry I didn't hear any Man from U.N.C.L.E. references, because that's the origin of the Megatron gun.
Oh,
As
whoa.
you can see there, that is the Man from U.N.C.L.E. gun there, all you Transformers fans. There it is.
Ooh.
Oh,
Wow, the
yes, yes,
technology we have on this show.
It's, it's impressive. It's impressive.
Yes. So, Darren, what do you think of the Peter Graves and his brother story?
I'm still not really finding anything too disagreeable. There's certainly nothing as outlandish as bodies being stuffed into whiskey barrels. It seems like a very plausible story.
Wait a second. Is he throwing himself under the grave train?
Maybe he's saying that he's more bluff than Chris. I don't know. Adri, what do you think?
I'm going to agree with Darren. The only thing that I really thought were a lot of similarities between, Peter Grave and his wife being married 60 years, with Jada Pinkett Smith and Will Smith, and their beautiful marriage that's on the same trajectory as them. That's really what resonated with me. Chris's story is so plausible, so believable, that two brothers did all this stuff and nobody knew they were brothers. Then Darren's story is just absolutely outrageous. I don't know who to believe. Obviously, I'm not the bluff, but these two are really, really throwing like daggers over here, because one is so ridiculous that the other one looks ridiculous.
Oh boy. Once again,
Thank you. Thank you for coming to my
the
TED Talk.
historian has claimed not to be the bluff. But that leaves us with decision-making time.
It does.
Who, pray tell, is the bluff? Do you, the audience, know?
Oh.
Do any of our historians have an opinion? All right, Darren, what do you think? Who's bluffing and who's telling the truth?
This is tough because I know for a fact that Lincoln did have a child who died during his presidency and that he was very upset by it. I don't recall anything about ghosts. And as I said, I am a bit of a historian of Mission Impossible and Peter Graves in particular. And I do believe I recall him being related to James Arness. So I'm going to say, by process of elimination, Adri is the bluff.
Oh.
Adri might be bluffing about the ghost of Willie and Abraham Lincoln.
Not little Willie.
I don't know. Well, Chris, what's your opinion?
It's interesting. I really don't think that Baltimore and Ohio Railroad was considered the crux of bringing America together in the 1830s into one nation. I love the possibly made up story of a stiff drink coming from cadavers being smuggled onto planes in big barrels of whiskey. And I do know, just from other stories, history that I've done on this show, that we've had that grave digging, it was done for medical student research purposes. But a long, long time before this, not saying that makes this false. But with all that being said, I think Adri's bluffing.
Wow.
Adri. Okay.
Wow,
that's two
all
votes
that
for
and
Adri.
then just an accusation? No reason?
All that to say, Adri's the bluff. Well, Adri, you've been accused by every other historian, so now's your chance to take revenge on either one of your accusers. Who do you think is bluffing?
Well, Darren's story has several levels of ridiculousness. I don't also believe that the railway in the Northeast was the connector of the Americas or whatnot. I definitely don't think that they would just go down to Baltimore to dig because the land was too frozen up north. Like, it would be frozen there too. Yeah, I think Chris is the bluffer this week. All that to say, Chris is the bluff.
All right.
So Darren had an unbelievable story, but he was completely telling the truth. Okay.
Correct.
So what that means is Darren has received 0 votes.
Wow.
So Darren, if in fact you were bluffing, you did a masterful job, and you would be the undisputed winner.
He would.
However, if Adri was the bluff, that means that we will share credit amongst Darren and Chris for rightfully choosing the bluff. And Chris, you've been accused by who?
Adri.
Got it. Okay, so that's it. I don't know who the bluff is, so Adam,
Yeah.
let us know what's up.
I will let you know what's up. I and I alone have the information. The secret knowledge of who the bluff is. Was your bluff Darren? Was your bluff Chris? Or could it have been Adri? Hold your breath, because it's about to happen. The bluff tonight was Adri.
Congratulations, panel. You all guessed correctly.
Indeed.
What do you say? Well, so wait, now we know the origin of stiff drink.
That's
We
right.
do.
Very cool.
And rot gut liquor.
And
I
rot
didn't know
gut
that.
liquor.
I'm very excited to now know this.
Interesting. And also Peter Graves had a famous brother.
James Arness.
And also that thing.
Yes,
And
Adri.
the White House is really haunted.
Okay.
I
What's
just-
the real way it's haunted?
Just not with little Willie.
By its occupant.
No, by all the people that I mentioned, the only thing that wasn't true was that the part where Queen Wilhelmina sees Abe Lincoln on her bed.
Oh.
That didn't happen.
But it is haunted.
But it is haunted. Yes.
Ooh.
Rightfully
Spooky,
so.
scary. So don't
you
go
said
to the White House.
You said another president was on her bed. It was totally believable. Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Kennedy,
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nixon.
Yeah, oh, definitely. Well,
Oh, John Quincy Adams, what are you doing here?
John Quincy Adams. He gets a record scratch.
What are the odds? Well,
Oh, my
that
God.
takes us to another end of a fascinating episode. I learned something. I hope you guys did too.
Oh, I
Adam, take us home.
did. Let's do it, Alan. Thank you. Thank you, historians. We are here every week, live and streaming. Come on back and see us, learn something, and laugh.